A small mistake, a slip that seemed so slight, almost invisible. And yet, in the mind of the boy, it grew like a shadow stretching across a quiet room. He felt it immediately, though no one else might have noticed. Did he drop the cup because he was careless, or did it simply tremble from the weight of his own restless hands? It hardly mattered. What mattered was the sudden, sharp awareness that he had done something wrong. He stood there for a long moment, frozen, listening to the soft sound of it hitting the floor, feeling the echo linger in the empty space around him. The silence afterward was strange, as if the world itself had paused to watch. His heart beat quickly, and a small knot of discomfort settled in his chest. It was not fear, not exactly, but a quiet sting, a gentle prick of shame that he could not shake. How strange it was, he thought, that something so small could feel so large inside. He wanted to reach out, to correct it, to gather the fallen pieces and set them right. But his hands remained still. There was something in the stillness that held him back. Perhaps it was the weight of noticing his own imperfection. Perhaps it was the first whisper of something he could not yet name. The moment stretched, slow and careful, and he listened to the small private voice inside that seemed to hum with uncertainty. Why does a single slip feel heavier when it is our own? He wondered. Why do our own mistakes echo louder than the shouts of others? He looked at the tiny spill, at the mess he had made, and a strange sense of vulnerability washed over him. Not because anyone had seen, not because anyone had spoken, but simply because he knew. Because he felt the truth of it quietly pressing against the walls of his small, careful mind. He could almost hear it, the soft voice of judgment that rises within all of us, even in the absence of another's eyes. It whispered in the corners of the room, in the spaces between his thoughts, in the pause before a breath. You should have been more careful, it said, though no one had said it aloud. And strangely, he did not argue. He did not push back. He simply let the words settle like dust in the sunlight, watching them drift across the floor of his consciousness. There was something tender in that quiet observation, something almost sacred. He realized that mistakes are not always loud. They do not always come with voices, or scolding or reproach. Sometimes they arrive softly, almost unnoticed, and yet they leave a mark deeper than any spoken word could. He felt the small weight of it, heavy and gentle at the same time, and he began to see the strange beauty in it. Could it be that even a mistake has its own quiet lesson, if one only sits long enough to feel it? He remembered the feeling of his hands just moments before, restless and fidgeting. Now, in the silence, they felt strangely still, aware of themselves, aware of the small tremble that had caused the spill. There was a soft kind of learning in that stillness. Not a lesson shouted, not a correction forced, but something quieter, something that slipped slowly into the heart and stayed. A recognition that the world does not need to roar at us for us to notice. Sometimes the silence is enough. And in that silence he began to notice other things too. The way the light fell across the floor, the faint scent of the air around him, the soft hum of his own quiet breathing. The mistake, which had seemed so sharp and urgent at first, now began to feel like a gentle teacher, guiding him without sound, without pressure, without blame. Could it be that this small imperfection was showing him something about himself he had not known before? He allowed himself to linger there, feeling the delicate weight of the moment. He did not rush to fix it. He did not apologize or explain. He simply let it exist. And in that existence, in the soft acknowledgement of what had happened, he began to feel a strange kind of calm. It was not pride. It was not relief. It was simply an understanding that life sometimes offers small stumbles, and that noticing them, truly noticing them, is the first step toward something quieter and deeper. How long he stood there he could not say. Time had slowed, folded into the small space of that room and that moment. And though the spill would one day be cleaned, though the cup would be set back in its place, the feeling lingered, a gentle, private weight, not heavy enough to crush, but enough to remind him that he was alive to himself, that he could see his own errors clearly, and in seeing, begin to feel a quiet kind of growth. And so he stood still listening, to the echo of the small accident, to the whisper of his own heart, to the quiet lesson that had come without a word. It was simple. It was small. It was a moment that might pass unnoticed by anyone else. But for him, it was everything. A beginning, perhaps, of a life lived with awareness. A life that could feel its own stumbles, and in feeling them, quietly learn the shape of its own heart. The moment after the spill was still, but it did not last. They came, as they always seemed to, moving through the quiet space like shadows. They looked at him, their eyes bright with a kind of sudden amusement, their voices soft but sharp in the way they carried judgment without needing to speak it plainly. The boy felt them before he heard them. There was a weight in the air, a shift, a subtle pressure that made his chest tightened. How strange it was, he thought, that so many eyes could turn on a single moment and yet see so little of what had actually happened. They whispered, a low chorus of words that seemed to float just above the floor. He could not make out all of them, and perhaps that was better. Sometimes, he realized, misunderstanding is heavier than words themselves. They laughed, not loudly, not cruelly, but in that gentle, almost careless way that made him feel smaller than he had before. Was it the cup that amused them, or the trembling of his hands, or perhaps simply the quietness with which he stood, rooted in his own awareness while they looked on, expecting him to mirror their noise? The boy wanted, for a fleeting moment, to explain, to reach into the space between them and himself and show them the truth as he felt it. But the words did not rise. They seemed too loud, too heavy, too foreign to the small, careful silence he had built around himself. And so he remained still, listening to their murmurs, listening to the soft echo of his own pulse, and feeling the strange tension of being seen yet not understood. Why do they not see what is within? He wondered. Why does their laughter pierce so deeply when it speaks only to the surface of things? He looked down at the spill again, at the tiny imperfection on the floor, and then back at the faces turned toward him. They could not know the quiet struggle he had carried in that single misstep, the whisper of shame, the tremor of thought, the soft, careful noticing of himself. They could not know because they had not listened. they had only observed. He felt a little flame of resistance in his chest, not a loud anger, not a sharp resentment, but a subtle, quiet refusal to let their judgment define him. What they said, what they thought, could only touch the surface. It could not reach the inner place where he had Auri. Addie faced his own mistake. And still, the tension lingered, a thin, delicate wire between him and them, vibrating softly with the energy of misunderstanding. It was in this moment, standing among them yet apart, that he began to see something he had not seen before. They were not cruel, perhaps, not in the way he had first imagined. They were simply unaware, caught in their own view of the world, seeing only what they expected to see, not what actually was. And he, small as he felt, had a choice. He could react, he could speak, he could defend, or he could simply remain quiet, letting the stillness carry him above their notice. The boy noticed his own breathing, slow and even, rising and falling like the gentle sway of a tree in a quiet breeze. He felt the soft pulse of his heart, steady beneath the flutter of their attention. What did it mean, he wondered, to be truly seen? To be understood? Perhaps it was not theirs to give. Not yet. Perhaps understanding begins within, in the quiet place where no one else's eyes can reach. And so, he let the moment stretch. He felt the weight of their gazes, the soft pressure of expectation, and yet he did not move. He did not try to meet their eyes, or to argue, or to explain. He simply stood there, rooted in his own quiet, feeling the small tremors of discomfort, and noticing them, naming them silently in the chambers of his mind. Was it fear? Shame? Something else entirely? A strange mixture that felt like a first taste of what it might mean to carry oneself gently, even under observation. He imagined the spill as a small pond, its ripples moving outward, touching them in ways they could not see, touching him in ways they could not know. And he realized slowly that their laughter and whispers were not the end of the story. They were only a small chapter, a momentary sound in a larger, quieter life. The quiet was his to hold, to feel, to inhabit, and in that quiet, he began to understand the strange freedom of being unseen in the ways that matter most. The whispers faded, or perhaps he simply stopped listening to them. Their attention drifted elsewhere, leaving him in a gentle solitude that was neither lonely nor empty. He felt a small warmth in the center of himself, a quiet acknowledgement that he had remained whole, even under the weight of misunderstanding. And in that warmth, he began to notice something tender growing, an understanding that silence, when chosen carefully, can speak louder than any voice. And so he stood, quiet among them, feeling the soft edges of observation and judgment slide past him like wind through leaves. He did not need their eyes to see himself. He did not need their voices to measure his own worth. In the stillness, he felt the first gentle stirrings of something larger than the moment. Something that could hold both mistake and misjudgment without breaking. Something that could quietly carry him forward into the slow unfolding of his own understanding. In the quiet that followed, something began to shift inside him. The whispers had faded, the eyes had turned away, and yet a strange kind of attention remained within. It was not the noise of others, nor the pressure of expectation, but a soft, steady presence that he felt in the center of himself. He could hear it if he listened carefully, like the gentle hum of water under ice. It was quiet, yet it carried weight, a weight that seemed to rise from somewhere deep and still, unshaken by laughter or glance. He felt it in his chest first, a small warmth that grew slowly, spreading outward, filling the spaces that had been hollowed by shame and fear. Could it be that this silence he had chosen, this careful stillness, was not emptiness at all? Perhaps it was something more, something that had been waiting for him, waiting for the moment when he could let the world speak and yet not be carried away by it. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, letting the quiet wrap around him like a soft cloth. In that silence, he could hear his own thoughts clearly, each one distinct, each one unhurried. He noticed how fast his heart had beaten in the presence of judgment, and now how steady it had become, like a gentle drum keeping time with the slow rhythm of understanding. What strange power there is in not speaking, he thought, not in the loudness of a shout or the sharpness of words, but in the simple act of holding oneself carefully, without rushing to answer, without bending to the weight of expectation. His hands rested lightly at his sides. They no longer trembled. His feet felt rooted, though he did not move. He realized that he had discovered a place inside himself that could remain calm no matter what swirled around him. And with that calm came a subtle sense of strength, not the kind that is shown or boasted, but the kind that grows quietly, unseen, like roots spreading under the soil. He remembered the spill, the soft crash of the cup on the floor, the small mess he had created. At first, it had been a source of shame, a mark of imperfection he had felt compelled to hide. And yet, in the stillness now, it felt different. It was no longer a mistake to be feared, but a small teacher showing him the way of patience, of restraint, of gentle observation. Could it be that mistakes, when met with quiet attention, could become sources of subtle strength? He imagined the world around him as a vast, soft space, full of noise and motion, full of eyes that sought to see and voices that sought to judge. And yet, within that space, he could carry a place untouched by them, a place that belonged solely to him. How strange, he thought, that such a place could exist, and that it could. Feel so alive, so full, even in the absence of praise or understanding from outside. The boy felt the soft hum of life within him, a quiet energy that did not need to rush or demand. He realized that choosing not to react, not to argue, not to defend, was not weakness. It was a kind of mastery, a gentle control of the self that could not be taken away. What does it mean to be powerful, he wondered, if not to remain steady when all around moves and shifts, to hold one's own center, to feel the quiet pulse of one's own being without interference? He let the thoughts settle, letting each breath deepen and slow, letting each heartbeat remind him of the stillness he had found. There was no hurry, no urgency, only the gentle unfolding of understanding. The world outside might move with noise, with laughter, with whispers, but he had discovered a quiet realm within, a place where his dignity was intact unshaken, and where his own awareness could rise like a soft light in the darkness. He looked at the small spill again, not with fear, not with shame, but with quiet recognition. It had been a moment of imperfection, and yet it had led him here, to this calm understanding of himself. Could it be that this is how strength grows? Not in triumph, not in applause, but in the patient holding of oneself through moments when the world misunderstands, when the eyes are unkind, when the voice of others might tempt us to rise in anger or resentment. He felt the soft pulse of his own heartbeat as if it were a small, steady drum in the quiet night. Each beat reminded him that this calm was real, that this inner power was his, that he could carry it forward into whatever came next. And in that quiet, he felt the first real taste of freedom, not loud or brash, not seen by others, but quietly strong, quietly whole, quietly his own. The boy remained still, breathing slowly, feeling the warmth of calm settle around him. And in that stillness, he understood something he had not known before, that the truest strength is quiet, that it grows in the spaces between words, in the pauses between actions, in the gentle, unwavering attention to oneself. It does not need to be noticed. It does not need to be acknowledged. It simply exists, quietly, deeply, and completely, like a soft light that never fades. The room had grown still again, and in that stillness, he felt a soft settling within himself. The echoes of laughter, the whispers of judgment, even the tiny sound of the spilled cup, all of it seemed to drift farther away, leaving only a quiet space that belonged entirely to him. He breathed slowly, noticing the gentle rise and fall of his chest, the soft pulse in his wrists, the calm rhythm of life that had always been there, waiting for him to recognize it. Was this what it meant to feel truly calm? Perhaps. Perhaps it was simply the beginning of learning to hold oneself quietly, even when the world insists on noise. He looked around, but the room no longer seemed filled with observers. It felt like a place of soft light, a gentle expanse where nothing pressed upon him. And in that space, he began to notice something he had not felt before, the deep, quiet strength of simply being. It was not a loud or dazzling power, but something small and steady, like the slow turning of a river beneath the surface. Could it be that the most enduring power is the one that cannot be seen or measured, the kind that lives quietly inside, untouched by the chaos of others? His hands rested softly on his lap, and he felt their warmth, their small presence in the world. Each finger seemed to hum with life, each breath a small proof that he was here, fully alive, fully aware. He thought about the mistake he had made, the spill, the trembling, the whispers that had followed. And now, in this quiet reflection, it seemed far away, softened by distance, yet never forgotten. Was this the way the heart learns? By noticing, by feeling, by allowing each moment to leave its gentle mark, without judgment, without hurry. He imagined himself walking slowly through a garden, though there was no garden before him, only the soft space of imagination. The air was calm, the colors muted, the world alive in a delicate, patient way. And as he imagined, he began to understand something quietly profound. That life does not demand noise or response. That dignity is not found in the clamor of words, but in the soft clarity of one's own awareness. Could it be that walking through life in this way, quietly attentive to oneself, is the truest form of self-respect? He remembered the small discomfort he had felt when they had laughed, when they had whispered. It had been sharp at first, like a stone pressed into the chest, and yet now he could feel the edges of that discomfort soften, like snow melting slowly in the warmth of sunlight. It was not gone, not forgotten, but it had changed. It had become part of him, a reminder that the world may never fully understand, that others may never see the quiet triumphs of patience and restraint. And still, that did not diminish their value. He felt a gentle warmth in his chest, a calm that spread slowly, like water soaking into dry earth. It was not pride, not boastful or loud, but a soft certainty, the kind that comes from simply knowing oneself. He could feel the strength in not reacting, in allowing the noise of others to pass without taking hold, in holding steady when the world presses in. What is more rare, he wondered, than a heart that can remain calm in the presence of judgment, a mind that can hold itself gently, a soul that does not waver when the eyes of others fall upon it? He let his thoughts drift quietly. Yai, like clouds moving slowly across a calm sky. There was no urgency, no need to measure or fix anything. He simply noticed. He noticed the soft rhythm of his breathing, the quiet pulse of his heartbeat, the gentle weight of life in his hands and feet. And in noticing, he felt the soft armor of self-respect settling over him, not heavy or rigid, but light, flexible, and strong in its own quiet way. Could it be that true power has always been this simple, this soft, this hidden? He imagined the world outside this quiet space, full of motion and voices, full of judgment and misunderstanding. And yet, he no longer feared it, no longer felt the need to defend himself. There was a place within him that could remain untouched, a sanctuary of calm and clarity, where mistakes and whispers could touch him, but not break him. He realized that this was what he had been seeking all along. Not approval, not recognition, not applause, but the quiet certainty of being whole, even in the midst of imperfection. He breathed again, slowly, gently, letting each exhale carry away the last traces of tension. And in that gentle movement, he understood that the world may always speak, may always judge, may always misunderstand. But within the quiet of his own heart, he had found a place of peace. A place where silence carried power, where restraint brought strength, where awareness alone was enough to hold him steady. And in that quiet, he felt the soft, enduring truth that had always been waiting for him, that the calm, attentive heart is its own home, its own fortress, its own gentle, unshakable strength.